change your mind, change your habits, change your life.
Cool. When you
35
told me-
hours of meditation in 1 week.
And just like kind of an unraveling of what we've always known to be true about physics,
right?
And about reality in general.
Traveling into the quantum where all that is energy. That's where you can tune into that possibility.
Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor, where we discuss 5D concepts to help you thrive in a 3D world. Today, we are here with Nicole Ray. Nicole is a mindset and manifestation coach, and she helps people manifest wealth and success. Welcome, Nicole.
Yay, so happy to be here.
I am so ready to nerd out with you on all things neuroscience and metaphysical. I absolutely love what you do, the work that you do, and the way that you speak about it. But first, of course, I want to dive into your story and like your journey with spirituality.
Yeah, so I feel like I found spirituality and manifestation fairly young. I was really about 15, 16.
Wow.
And really it was by virtue of being in a really tumultuous family situation. And I remember having this very clear awareness. I remember exactly where I was standing in my childhood home, that this was happening for me, that I was learning, that I was growing, that while I was really challenged and went through a lot of pain and definitely had some trauma, I knew that there was a gift in it for me, that there was some good that could come of it. And I think that awareness was really like a guiding theme through all of that, because I also had some wise women around me that handed me books on chakras and healing, and I just dove into that stuff. I was doing chakra meditations on myself at home, and I was like 19 when I got Reiki certified. So I just felt so deeply in my heart and so intuitively that there was something to energy work, that there was something to crystals and yoga. And really, in a way, I say all that stuff saved my life, because it really had me focus on personal growth at a young age, and even seeing a therapist through my high school in my teenage years. All of that really focused my mind on how could I grow, how could I learn. And so I started my healing journey pretty young, I would say.
That is absolutely incredible. I had full body chills while you were talking, because exactly what you just said, it saved you. It's, everybody, humans that have this incredible resiliency, and we find something. Sometimes it's something we have to end up unlearning at a later time, but we find something to help us survive. And so the fact that you found spirituality, which is the ultimate healer, the ultimate way to find your way to be your own healer, is amazing.
Yeah, I would say so.
California, that's where you grew up?
Yeah, Los Angeles.
And then at what point did you come here to Louisville?
I moved here in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
What brought you here?
My husband, he was born and raised here. Yeah, we met in the Southern California area. So I was in the spa industry in Southern California for a good 15 years, in the Palm Springs area, actually. And then I met him there. And as things got serious between us, we gravitated towards coming back here.
Okay, so I've got to ask, because I know you've told me a couple times that you manifested your husband.
Yeah.
So what did that look like for you?
Well, it started with a lot of relationships that were not so good, that were very strained, and particularly one that I was in for 7 years. And it was one of these like on again, off again, break up, back together. And I had to have this moment of like, okay, like stop the insanity, first of all. And I had to take responsibility for how I was participating in all of that. And so while that breakup was really, really painful, I had to, number one, decide that I was not going to go back, because I was part of that on again, off again cycle. And I had to deal with the pain. I had to actually feel the pain instead of run from the pain. And I had a history of, my dad leaving when I was 4, my brother committing suicide when I was in my early 20s. So I had this this story, this subconscious story of like men leave. So I had to deal with
Chills
what did
again.
I believe about men? What did I believe about my worthiness? What did I believe about relationships in general? And do all that unwiring. And so I was in the books, I was in the programs, I was with the coaches. I was really serious about, I literally had a moment between me and the universe where I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this whole love thing. And while it was getting to the bottom of love and relationships, it was also getting to the bottom of manifestation. Like, I, to this day, consider my husband one of my greatest manifestations because it was a clear desire, but it was also like, in order for me to truly fulfill on that desire, I had to become the woman who could be wife. I had to become the woman who could really be in that kind of union. And that required healing and that required change. But also, like, so beautiful to have gone through that journey and to become someone who can just, to this day, feel so happy and good in my marriage.
I've chills the whole time you were talking. Almost had me tear up. That is so beautiful. And I can resonate so much with when you were on. I feel like that's the journey that I'm on. And I think it's so interesting to think about this idea that, okay, here's what you want. What, like, think about it like a radio station. Where are you tuned in right now? What
Yes.
frequency are you operating at? And how can you align your frequency with the frequency of what you're drawing in and what you want? And if you look at like these models that are out there for what are high frequency, the highest frequency that you can operate at is love. And where does that start? That doesn't mean love outside of yourself. That means like basically remembering that you are love.
Yes.
And that's such a, I don't know. I feel like I want so badly to like break that down to everybody out there that is in pain because of their own struggle with self-love and because of their struggles in relationships.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's slowly, but it's a process. I mean, it's a process that I've been in and been going through. And like, I've had these moments of like, oh, this is what that means, or this is what that looks like. Sometimes with plant medicine, sometimes just in my own like realizations and you know, noticing the small things or moments, or when you're like kind to someone who is unkind and you watch the energy, like you literally transmute the energy. It's just incredible.
I think sometimes, like, when I look back on that particular part of my journey, I don't know that I was so tuned into understanding that I was changing my frequency. It looked different, right? It didn't look like, it looked like me really sitting with myself. It looked like me journaling things out. It looked like me, you know, confronting the beliefs that weren't serving me, confronting the ways of being that weren't serving me. And that ultimately changed my frequency and changed what I would refer to as like my default frequency, right? Because there's that default pattern way of being that we have, and we have a default pattern in our relationships. We have a default pattern in our relationships with money, this sort of way where we just sort of settle into it, and that's just kind of like who we end up as. And I had to literally change that default positioning. So that required me to release a certain defensiveness and release a certain closed offness. It required me to become willing to be vulnerable and actually open and receptive. And at the time, I think I was bumping up against the resistance that needed to be bumped up against. And so it didn't quite feel like a frequency. But then looking back, I can see exactly the way you described about the different levels of frequency, right? Like, oh yeah, I am vibrating totally different, and my default patterning is totally different.
When you say bumping up against things, you mean like tests, like patterns resurfacing. So it sounds to me like you had this incredible self-awareness moment of like, hell no. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it again. And you were like, okay, this is, obviously you had coaches and people that you worked with, but you also had that self-awareness of like, oh, I'm doing this, or like, oh, this is me struggling with vulnerability. This is a defense mechanism. This is me, falling into old patterns. So when you say like bumping up against things, did you feel like, I believe that the universe, source, whatever, sends you tests that allow you to keep working through?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you meant by bumping up against things?
Yeah, I think that those kinds of tests or challenges could be seen as that. It's like, okay, she's resisted this particular thing for so long. Are we going to actually behave a new way? Are we going to be a new way? I mean, even just to stay in the context of dating, for me, it was a lot of really being able to be with rejection and reframe that. And so instead of being triggered into low self-worth and doubt and all of those things that can come up when we experience rejection, like that then became, oh, they're just not a match. And then there was no charge around that anymore, right? Because it was a completely different interpretation. But there was a journey from where I was reacting to that reframe where I had to, now it's clear as day, right? It's just easy to see it that way. But there was a time where, to come into that new thought and that new way of being, and then to really operate from there and embody from there, that's the journey.
I would like to just acknowledge that that's hard as hell. Like, especially when you have old, and most people in some way, shape, form, or fashion, even if you had the nicest parents, I mean, there's some, there's rejection trauma in there somewhere from something. And I think just in the culture and society that we live in general. And so when you have this, I think it's almost this, like, I hate to call it a twisted joke, but the fact that your sense of self is subconsciously developed between 0 and 7 in a time in which you cannot control your environment.
Yep.
And then you spend the rest of your life kind of undoing that.
Yeah.
So you're battling, confirmation bias of the brain, and you don't want to have a low sense of self-worth. So you look for ways to avoid that. And anything that, you come into, like you said, a rejection, or what your brain looks at as a rejection.
Yeah.
It's like that piece of self-worth that believes you're not enough back there. It's pinging on that.
Yeah.
So you want to avoid that at all costs. So to be able, but to truly, like, put yourself out there and be vulnerable and date, you have to be willing to accept that not everybody's going to be a fit.
Right. And actually that serves you, because you don't need everybody to be a fit.
And that's how you draw in who's really for you, is like really, truly, like, putting yourself out there with a full and open heart.
Yes.
And being vulnerable and moving along your way. And that's what's blocking so many of us, because we're not willing to risk that perceived rejection.
Yeah.
Ugh.
There's another piece of that. I just lost it too.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. We're talking about the rejection and
the other part, you said there's another piece to that.
Yeah. What was the... Nope, I lost it.
We'll come back. It'll come back.
Oh, it's the authenticity piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that in order to have the type of relationship that I wanted, I had to act a certain way, be a certain way, adapt to the situation, adapt to the person. And so it was completely counterintuitive to actually get fully committed to being 100% myself, totally authentic and true to what I wanted, what I needed, what my values were. And when I was able to do that, it's so much easier to actually find a true match, right? Like I say, you can't be with your soulmate if you're not coming from soul. And I would define soul as like the you that you are, the truth of who you are. So unless you're willing to actually know yourself at that level and be at that level, it's going to be really hard to actually attract and connect with somebody authentically at that level.
Because if you're constantly worried about not being rejected, you're just going to adapt to the people around you just so that they will continue to like you, so you'll never have to deal with the rejection. Exactly. And when I see, and I'm completely have been guilty of that, but I've seen people do that to me, and that energy is very obvious.
Yes.
It's very obvious that you just want me to like you.
Right.
And I know, because I've experienced that myself, I've been there, I know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But girl, listen, let's get into money before I turn this into a therapy session for me. I'll forget what we're talking about. We'll be 30 minutes in. I'll be like, well, Nicole, what about this? So I feel like it's so cool that those two, two of the biggest things that I think that people would like to improve in their life out there, money, which means freedom, time, all the things, and relationships. So the fact that, they're both things that are at a certain frequency and the way that you manifest them, there's a lot of similarities there.
I
So
would
I'm
say
glad
so.
that we started with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's certainly, definitely, part of my journey for sure. For sure.
So like I said, I've told your Party City story like 3 times because it's so like fascinating to me that like these experiences early on, like your subconscious brain is taking all that in and it's storing that, and it's just like 0 to 7.
Yeah.
It is influencing how you feel, like what your relationship is about money.
Yeah.
So if you grow up in a household where money is always scarce and there's a lot of stress around money, there's always a reaching for money, and there's always a fear of when it's not there, or there's a condemning of people who have money, or there's like a shaming around money, all of that is stored back there. And so I'd love to just jump into I'll let you tell it, but I thought that was such a great example of a very small and simple thing that created a belief about money in your subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to just share this first and then I'll get into that, because how I came into essentially wealth consciousness or prosperity consciousness was I was on my own from a really young age. And so, there wasn't like a fallback, or I didn't have parents that I could like go stay at their house, or it was like me, and I moved out at 17. And so I had to figure out a way to make it happen. And as I was on that journey of supporting myself, right, at 17, 18, 19, I was actually given a book by one of these wise women I mentioned earlier called Creating Money, which is a channeled book about manifesting money. And I remember being a little bit skeptical about it at first, but I started to do some of the tools and the practices, and things started to happen. I mean, I was manifesting jobs, and then that work just stayed with me even through massage studies, through building a clientele, through attracting certain income levels, and it just really became part of my survival.
What is that? I want to ask you, what does that look like? Like when you say attracting jobs or certain incomes, like what does that process look like?
Well, one, always deciding what it is that you want or what you're going to go for, So for me, during part of that time, it was like, okay, like how much money am I going to choose to make this month, or what is the income level that I want to be at? And sometimes that would be a weekly practice for me of deciding how many clients I wanted to see. And then literally, there would be the mental work of, okay, deciding this is what it's going to be, seeing what I already had scheduled, following some intuition of like, okay, who should I call, or who do I feel like reaching out to, and allowing space for those intuitive nudges. And I would allow that work to do. I might reach out to somebody, or, and then I would let it be. I would surrender it. And usually by the end of the week, those other calls would come in, it would be filled, and I would be back on Sunday looking back like, okay, cool, I did 15. That's what I wanted to do. And so just that, like, using the power of my mind, using the power of focus, using the power of intuition, and then letting that energetically line up.
And I think that rejection piece comes into play here too,
For sure.
because if you did make the call and you didn't hear back, well, wasn't in alignment.
Absolutely.
This or something better.
Always. So on that journey, as I would increase that number, that would get uncomfortable. And that was when I really started to get into like the subconscious mind work, right? Because I also found that I would kind of hover at this certain income level.
Like, this is enough, this is fine.
Yeah, and not really like consciously I would desire more, but I would still end up at the same level. Or like I would change jobs and change a situation, but yet it would end up the same despite having changed locations. So I started to get into like, well, why is that? And I started to learn about the subconscious mind. And I would do, I still to this day will do like Theta brainwave, listening to those tools that activate theta waves, which we can get into brainwaves in a minute.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. And so just this idea that we believe things that we don't even actually have the awareness that we're believing them. And I think there's a quote by Carl Jung that says, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will believe that it's your fate, right? It'll just unfold and you just think it's destined to be. Meanwhile, you have these beliefs, these point of views, these patterns that are unconscious to you, that are literally running the show, that are literally telling you what you can earn or not earn, or how you can earn or can't earn, or, what amount you can have in savings or invest. Like, we have almost like a mental energetic thermostat of what we feel comfortable with and what feels really uncomfortable. And we're creatures of habit, right? So we'll just constantly go towards what's comfortable.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, that default pattern of just having that same situation. So in order to actually make change, in order to expand and receive more, in order to actually not have debt, right? To really make a change, those inner workings need to be addressed. That it really, I find that our beliefs, I've just seen it with myself, and I'll share based on that story you brought up, that as I was going through a certain part of my own inquiry of like, okay, well, what do I believe? Now, for me, when that happens, I'll come up with some limiting beliefs, but it's the ones that as I'm going along in my life, and then all of a sudden I have a memory of something. And so in that case, as I was, in my journey with looking at my own relationship with money, I had this memory of being a little girl and finding money in my mom's drawer and just thinking like, oh, hey, cool, money. And taking $100 bill and getting my friend and going down to the party store and just buying a whole bunch of party favors. And I remember so clearly the little girl like walking up and down those aisles, like just so happy and thrilled that she could buy whatever she wanted.
Fun,
like she
yeah.
was just like so into this. I remember the store clerk maybe being a little confused, like, where did you get this money and why are you doing this? This is not normal. But I was like, whatever, it's mine,
Yeah.
And then eventually, as you could probably tell, I got in a lot of trouble for that. And so here was this situation where, for me, what was in reality this fun, expressive thing, and then it ended up being the thing that I got in trouble, and that my friend that was with me got in trouble, and I was grounded, and it was like a really, really big moment in my childhood. And I had to, like, what decision did I make about myself in that moment? What decision did I make about money in that moment? I made the decision that money can't be fun. I made the decision, or there was some reinforcement of like, oh, like I'm not allowed to, or I'm not worthy of, being that fully self-expressed in my spending or in my relationship with money. And at the time, we don't know that we're making that decision.
Exactly.
But that decision absolutely stays with us. But it did give me some insight as to like, oh, well, no wonder there was tension. I mean, that was only one event in many,
Yes.
right? But when we start to connect those dots, I think we start to have the ability to have more compassion and be more compassionate with ourselves of like, oh, it's not really my fault. Like, I don't even think my mom was trying to instill this negative thing about money, right? She was just trying to be a good parent and no, you're not supposed to, take money out of my drawer.
Yeah.
You're not right. And yet still that moment instilled a belief.
That's why I loved that story so much, because I think that's such a powerful example of how simple and innocent. You, innocent and just a little girl, knew that money was something you could exchange for things. And your mom just being a mom saying, well, you can't steal things. And what an impact that had on you. And it makes me think, I think it's so relatable. And I think it's such a great example to help other people start doing a mental inventory of like, what was the energy, because money's an energy.
Yeah.
And what was the energy around money in my home growing up?
Yeah.
Like, I know for myself, and I see this all the time in stores too. I mean, like, a little kid goes into a store, there's shiny, pretty things everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's just natural to be like, oh, I want that. And it's almost like you see parents get triggered by that. Like, no, you can't have that. Like, I told you, don't ask for anything.
Let's also make sure we highlight that the marketing teams of those toy companies know exactly what what they're doing, and they know what they're doing for us too. And that's part of what we come up against, right? That is part of the journey.
So like, as a parent, you've got a kid with like big eyes and you're like fighting with them because they want all these like shiny things that they see. And you're like, no, we're literally here for like coffee and toilet paper. Like, no, I'm not getting anything in the store.
Yeah.
But you see parents like all the time get upset.
Yeah.
No, I told you can't have anything. So like, what is that doing? Even though, like you said, on both sides of that, innocent kid wanting things, parent just saying, look, can't have everything in the store. But what is that doing subconsciously to like ideas around money and spending and buying. I don't know. I just think that's
I do think there's a way, because obviously you don't want to, give the impression that, you
but
can
it doesn't
just
mean buy the
frivolously.
kid everything that they
Right,
want.
right. I think there's a way to communicate that.
Yeah.
There's a way to communicate that, and look, that you're still going to have the challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I think that there's a way to identify, like, okay, just like you said, like that's not what we're here for this time, but next time, or when it's your birthday, or if you're good on Saturday, or there's a way to designate that.
I think when I think about it, it's because for me, like my mother would get really angry with us, which can create shame. So then
Sure.
it's like almost like shame around asking for things that you want. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, which absolutely ties into our what we believe we're worthy of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even just being in the receiving mode is vulnerable, right? Being available to receive what it is that you desire, whether that's from another human or from the universe, like just being someone who is open to receive and is grateful to receive, and that walks that way. We're so much more conditioned to work hard and to close down and to do it all ourselves, especially like as women. We're raised to be like independent women and like don't receive gifts, like do it all for yourself. And then of course, even inside of that, like work really hard, improve yourself, and outwork everybody else, and then that burns our adrenal glands out. And
Yeah, like I think that this idea that success only comes when you like suffer and like have all this sacrifice, and if you aren't suffering, you aren't succeeding, and that is also inaccurate.
right. So true.
Hmm.
Yeah, that actually earning and spending and receiving could be pleasurable and easeful and calm and clear, right? Like actually something that is guided and decided, and not something that has to be impulsive and reactionary.
Yes. I think that the concept of scarcity mindset is really fascinating, and I often see it in people who are in a really good station in life, but I can always spot you know, the fear. It's like once they start spending or indulging, a lot of times you'll see a balance in couples. Like you'll have the more like person that's kind of in scarcity, and then the person that isn't at all, and then there's this clash
Yeah,
of ideas around money and spending.
for sure.
That would be great to do. Do you ever do like couples counseling around money?
Not I usually focus on an individual or in a
Yeah,
group program. Yeah, so that's not
it's an
really.
interesting
But I do
idea.
think that, you being on your own journey, like
Mm-hmm.
even if you are, if you're in a relationship, or if you are married, obviously, like if they're on board, it's great and it's easier, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And what I would say, if you are in a relationship and you want to up level your money or do something different, that taking ownership of yourself and your beliefs and your journey with it, like in other words, like don't use them as an excuse.
Yeah.
Like just because they're not on board the way that you think, still do what you need to do for you, still work on your mindset, still work on your energy. I think that that's really important, that we don't let ourselves be derailed just because our partner doesn't want to do it the way we want to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love some of the things that I've heard you share about, like, if people want to start, because the funny thing about the subconscious is it's not accessible. So you have to really like do the shadow work of seeing when something comes up and getting curious, and almost like a excavation of the subconscious through your thoughts and actions. And you had some really cool chat GPT prompts
Yeah.
that can kind of help give you clues.
Yeah.
Do you want to share
Yeah,
like one
really
of those?
quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you have a current situation, we all have a current situation, and let's say it's not the situation you want. Maybe it's you want to earn more, or you want to be in a different situation. In order to identify what limiting beliefs are actually causing you to be where you are, you can literally type in a chat GPT, this is my situation, this is my earning, this is, whatever the situation is. What limiting beliefs got me here, or what limiting beliefs has created my reality as such. And ChatGPT will deliver. And now you've got some beliefs to work with. Most of the time when people are in my programs and they start to do the inquiry, they're able to see. They're able to see pretty quickly, and they're able to get 2 or 3. And don't feel like you have to get 20 or 30. One belief, changing one belief. I'll actually share somebody that was a student in my program. She had come in, and at the time she was a bartender, just working on the weekends, and then COVID hit. So then her income was not there. And she just had a belief about working in corporate. And it just was based on a past situation that really didn't get healed or complete. And we just challenged that one belief that actually maybe there was, a corporation that could be in alignment with where she's at, that shared her values, that was supportive. And within 3 weeks, she didn't even put her resume out. A friend reached out to her and was like, hey, I think you'd be really good for this job. And that ended up being a salaried position with benefits. So to go from weekend bartender to a salary for a few years, which helped her then pay off a bunch of debt. And then now she moved to Panama. But I just remember watching her just challenge that one belief. There was another client of mine that just could not see herself making any more money. And I mean, when we get stuck that something is the way that it is, and it's just not going to be another way, and we just can't, this is where I feel like if all you do is just open up to some new possibility that you couldn't see before, that in and of itself is going to make so much more available to you. And I remember being in this session where this client was like, I just can't, she was just so caught up in I don't see it possible. I don't see another way for me to actually increase my income. But that was also matched with her deep desire and actual need too. There was something that was going on with her mom. She was going to have to support her mom for a little while. And I can't remember, it also took weeks. I want to say it was about 6 weeks that just her wrestling with that of maybe it is possible. I don't know. What would that look like? What would it be like if I was making an additional $500 a month or $1,000 a month? Just her allowing herself to sort of start to think into those new thoughts. And then she ended up getting an offer for a raise from her current job that wasn't what she wanted. She went back to them and, said this isn't it. And they ended up giving her this astronomical raise, which ended up for her being an additional $10,000 a year, which was double what she actually needed in that moment. And I had the privilege of being able to witness that, just starting off as a thought process, just starting off as one belief that just was not fully there, and then witnessing her, okay, well, what if, okay, maybe I could, maybe it is possible, but how? Then things started to line up in physical reality, and some of those conversations was happening with the job. And then the thing that she totally didn't think would happen is what happened, right?
Because she changed her thoughts, which changed her energy and her vibration, which drew in a new reality.
And here's what I love about that. Once you do that you remember that you did that. Now your ego will make you think oh, it was just a fluke. It was just a fluke. It only happened once. But if you really allow yourself to take inventory and look back and go, oh no, I did change that. So if I did it then, I can do it again. Once you have witnessed yourself have that power that one time, you just continue to ride the wave and go to the next one and go to the next one.
Wow. And that's, all the stuff out there about manifestation is just imagine it, be as if it already were, imagine it. But that's the subconscious work too. Mm-hmm. I think that's the difficult part. People are like, oh, that sounds easy enough. But it's not as easy to start with the subconscious pulling to the front to really come face to face with what you currently believe.
Yeah, I think I definitely believe that visualization is powerful, hypnosis is powerful, and part of that is we can talk about brainwaves, because it's when we're in the theta brainwave state that we are the most suggestible. And I just also find that doing that belief inventory in conjunction with some of those other tools I just think it's like a powerhouse, right? Because yes, visualization, and let's say you take on visualization. Well, you visualize yourself, you feel yourself in that new reality. What will most often come up is why or where that feels uncomfortable to you. Like, ooh, I don't know, it would feel a little awkward if I was earning that amount of money. You'll feel a tension in your body. You'll feel, and then you can actually go, oh, that's interesting. I'm not actually in the flow in my imagination. So what's that? That's going to indicate where some resistance is. So part of that is learning to relax your body, staying in that relaxed state, staying in that theta brainwave state, and relaxing into it, allowing for that reality to be experienced by your body, allowing for that reality to be felt so that you become more familiar with it. And Joe Dispenza talks about this, which I love his work. It's like practicing that end result, preparing for it, rehearsing it before it happens, because then you are prepared for it. Your subconscious mind is prepared for it, your body's prepared for it. You've been there, you've done that, you know what it's like. So there's nothing in you actually causing any resistance because you've already rehearsed it time and time again. And I just know for me, I like to look at manifestation in a couple different layers. So there's the mindset layer, there's the energetic layer, the metaphysics, there's the spiritual guidance, and then there's the practical steps, because more often than not, there is an action to take. That action could be your daily mindset practices. In the case of my client, she actually had to have the conversation with her job about the raise. Like, there's usually going to be some practical step to take. And I think some people are geared more towards one. Like, some people will really understand the energy of it, while some people will really understand the mindset of it. I love, I don't like to use the word attack, but like attacking it from all angles. Yeah. So when I know that there's been a limiting belief, then I can identify that and know that that's there. And now I can actually consciously start to do the work of that. So a lot of work with affirmations is getting used to thinking that new thought, trying it on as a belief, trying it on as a point of view, finding the reinforcement of that, finding evidence for it, right?
Because give your brain something new to look for evidence of, instead of it's looking for evidence of the I am not enoughness. Give it something, a new belief to look for evidence of.
Yeah.
I do the affirmations while I sleep. I listen to them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps.
Yeah.
I can I did for a while. I was doing it almost every night, and then I got to where if I had a photo shoot or if I was filming an episode or something like a big event, I would listen to it to just give me kind of a little extra
Yep.
pep in my step.
So good.
I want to ask you about theta waves.
Yeah.
So theta is something when you first wake up before you, and you can reach it in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Were you saying there's also a sound, you can, if you were to go on YouTube and type in theta waves, you can listen to it. Is that something in your practice? Do you use it during a meditation?
I can. I don't always. It just kind of depends. Particularly if I'm doing a lay down meditation, if I don't feel like doing a seated meditation, I'll listen to binaural beats or I call them theta waves. Because they will literally activate the theta waves. And usually they're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, so you're getting into a relaxed state. Because that theta wave state is kind of that half awake, half asleep, not quite asleep, not fully awake, conscious, aware. And it's a deep state of relaxation.
Which is also what happens when you're under hypnosis.
Yeah, you're highly suggestible in that state. That is the state to do your affirmations. That is the state to, to reinforce that new reality.
So in that theta state, if you were trying to really do some visualization, maybe playing the theta waves while doing your visualization.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Very
absolutely.
Cool. Oh, I love that so much, because that's been an interesting thing for me, is because, when I first really was researching plant medicine, one of the things I heard on Huberman that really stuck with me was, if you live in a state of fear, if you have a lot of phobias and you struggle with fear, and someone else is there's nothing to be afraid of. You're well, why did I think of that? You know what I mean? Consciously, you know that, but you've still got this stuck belief. And it was saying that while using in a plant medicine state, while using plant medicine, you can get to where you know what it's like to feel without fear or to feel self-love. And even though that wears off when the medicine wears off, you've actually felt it. Your cells have experienced it. So it then goes from theoretical to obtainable in your brain. So it sounds to me like when you describe this visualization process and like to really lean into it, you know, being in that relaxed state where you can kind of turn your frontal brain off, that's how you truly create an experience of it.
Absolutely.
Ah,
yeah. And
that's
I
amazing.
really I feel like your body absorbs it. Is
Your
like the
cells
best
are
way
listening
that-
in on your thoughts.
For sure. For sure.
Just, you know, and you hear it, but like the examples you've given are so incredible of like literally she changed a belief and a thought process and magnetized the opportunity that matched that new belief.
That's what I love about doing the work of money is that, yes, like there's ways that it can come in practically, but there's the ways that it comes in at a left field that you're like, oh, okay. You know, how did that happen? Where did that come from? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course that can happen with other things too, but particularly when it happens with money, then yeah.
Wow. And you know, science, it's interesting to me like how science is catching up with this, like what people have learned experientially. Like science is actually, and I was talking about this on a different episode than string theory, and just like kind of an unraveling of what we've always known to be true about physics,
Right.
and about reality in general. And so it's starting to like support what people that have studied them or been into the metaphysical have already, you know, understood to be true.
Right.
Which I think Joe Dispenza is so amazing for collecting the data and that he does. I'd love to chat about your experience there.
What would you like to know?
Everything. It just sounded so cool.
35 hours of meditation in 1 week. Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, I know you said it was split, the meditation time was split up.
Yeah. So the retreat, it's paced very well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so good at lecturing. Like, I just love, you know, the whole quantum physics thing and the way he describes all of it. And so you'll do about 90 minutes of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you get really primed because what I love about his work is he builds a lot of context. If you've never heard of his work or you've never heard him speak and you just go do one of his meditations, they're going to feel a little weird. You're like, what's going on? Right? But he builds the context for why we're doing what we're doing. And so a lot of his meditations will talk about feeling space around the body and expanding how far that space goes. And the reason he does that is because they found in their studies that when you sense space, you'll drop into that theta wave state, right? You'll get out of that alpha beta and get into theta.
When you sense the
space around you. Yeah. So in other words, also when you become like disidentified with your body, so no time, no physicalness, no, you're just in the blackness, in the pure space, because that's what gets you into that time space. That's what gets you into the quantum. So understanding that context, that's what's going on, then going into the meditation and actually experiencing it for yourself. And, oh, this is what he's talking about. Okay, I can trust it. I can go deeper. I can let go. I can go deeper. I can go deeper. I can sense that space. And by the way, throughout his whole retreat, he is at the front of the room, like guiding you through while there's also music. And it's done really, really well. So, you know, prior to going into that, I had not meditated for longer than, say, like an hour. That's about the outer limit. But you know, there was a 4-hour-long meditation at one point. And I think a lot of that was just like, oh, like I can do this. Like just building the patterns for like, I can do this. And also experiencing myself in that quantum state. It's powerful. And a lot of it, I believe, I mean, I think that many of his students would also say, like, for me, I experience it as being with Source, right? Yes. Like my access to Source, my access to actually be with that fabric of infinite intelligence that is within and around us all of the time, right? And yet most of us don't spend a lot of time just sitting with that level of reality. One of the things I love that he says is there is an infinite number of energetic frequencies, and everything that you experience, every amount of money, every outcome is an energetic expression. And so traveling into the quantum where all that is energy, that's where you can tune into that possibility, that new possibility.
Because every
as an
possibility
energetic
is
frequency.
there.
Exactly. And really, every possibility is here, right? Every possibility is with us always. And
It's tuning into it.
Exactly.
What is that? And I love what you said about context, because that's what I want this whole podcast to be, context. Like, I need context. When you give me context, I can run with it. But like you said, if somebody tells you to do something and you can't really buy into it, you're like, what you said about feeling into the space, can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, I think so. It's not a very logical thing, right? It's very much an experiential thing. And it literally is sitting in and feeling like if you're sitting in a room right now, you can tune into the space that is in the room. And then you could actually expand your awareness to reach the outer limits of the building. And your consciousness can actually feel that, right? And then you can expand beyond that. I mean, you can become aware of the space that is Louisville, Kentucky. That's how I like to look at it. But in his particular work, he's doing that for a very specific reason, and it is to have you disidentify with physical reality.
So it's sort of like visualization in a sense, because I was kind of just playing with it right now. Like, you're kind of leaving here. It's like the opposite of attunement in the moment. It's kind of like, I see what you say, but it's hard to kind of put into words.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying.
Experiential.
That is so cool.
Yes.
So what was that like during the 4 hours? I assume there's not a clock that you're watching or anything, so you have no idea. You kind of probably lose connection with time.
Yes. I mean, all throughout, absolutely. You'll be in an hour and a half long meditation and you think it's 15 minutes or vice versa. Like, it's, yeah, you lose touch with time.
And so my experiences with that have been with like pretty significant plant medicine experiences. It's kind of jarring, to lose connection with time, because I think the illusion of time gives us an illusion of control. So not knowing like how much time has passed, like, and it's again hard to put into words what it's like to not feel the passage of time. But it's I've definitely experienced that with plant medicine.
Yeah.
What
it requires a level of trust.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that building that trust in yourself, that trust in what is super advantageous to your manifestation journey, to your healing journey, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my journey. I'm on. Surrender and trust. It was funny. I said that to one of the facilitators. I was like, how do you get really good at surrender? And she was like, well, girl, when you figure that out, let me know.
Well, because as soon as you've surrendered to one thing, there's the next thing that you need to surrender to.
It's always, that's what she said. It's always a level up.
Yeah.
So you're in this, are there lots of other people in the room?
2,500 people.
Oh my God. And it's just silent.
No, he guides you. It's all guided.
It's talking.
Music, talking. In some of the cases, they do the kaleidoscope on screen. So you actually have like a visual in some of them, not all of them, but some of them.
At some point, does that get, for lack of a better word, a little trippy?
Yeah, definitely. But it also is really effective.
What's that feel like in your body just at a certain point?
I mean, I think one of the things I experienced is I became really aware when my body was holding and trying to still grab onto some kind of control or knowing, and then learning what that feels like to just let go.
Surrender.
And you're doing that again and again and again, right? And then each day builds on, right? Because you're getting more and more. I think you're doing like 3 meditations a day. And some of those are walking meditations, which are pretty phenomenal because everybody is outside together, walking, listening to his guided, like they'll tell you which one, and everybody listens to the same one. And yeah, they're amazing.
Would you say that's one of the most impactful experiences that you've had? I mean, what was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's definitely by far one of the, I mean, I've done a lot of personal development weekend seminars and that sort of thing. And that was by far one of the best experiences I've ever had. Yeah.
Wow. I know watching him talk about it on a podcast, I mean, just the way he lit up, like you could just tell, like, here is somebody in alignment with his purpose. And obviously, he's taken off so much at this point. Like, he doesn't have to still do in-person events, but he said because of the things that he's experienced at those events, the healing, the level of healing that occurs, like he does not want to stop doing in-person events.
That's one of the other experiences I'll share that was so profound is you do 3 coherence healings, and that's actually something that would be worthwhile to talk about is the heart-brain coherence. But, you know, you're 2,500 people, and then people apply to be a healee. And they reset the room where there's like pods of 6 people and then a healee in the middle. And then everybody comes in and you're guided to give healing energy so you're in this room with 2,500 people and everybody there is focused on one thing, and it's to give healing to this person. And he tracks and does all of the research and tracks all of that, and there's some amazing testimonials. But to witness that, I mean, I cried a lot in those coherence healings because it's just so amazing to see that many people together for that cause.
It sounds like when you take that many people and have their thoughts, which is our power, focused on one thing, and like the energy of that literally heals people. And you said it's people with pretty serious chronic illnesses.
Yeah, there were people with cancer, there were people. And to me, like just the bravery for someone to say, I believe this is possible, and I'm going to
I'm sure that's part of what it takes.
Absolutely.
You'd have to believe it.
Receive this healing and to have this happen. Like I was so moved. Yeah.
Power of intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, something I had a kind of aha moment came to me was that's what prayer is.
Absolutely.
And I have all these like funky subconscious blocks around prayer because of my early like religious experiences. Yeah. But the more I read about like intention, what a ritual is solidifying an intention. So like if you know, and they're doing your witchy
candle burning, yes.
It's just like somebody wearing their lucky socks for every game. You might say the placebo is powerful because it's the power of thought, which can literally create reality or does create reality. Yeah. So I was thinking about it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what prayer is.
Absolutely. And I always say that works 2 ways. Like one, it works on the subconscious level, because when you do that ritual or even you say that prayer, like you're literally imprinting onto your subconscious, like the intention. And then it also works on the energetic level, right? Because you are adapting your energetic frequency or interacting with the energetic frequency of the situation by participating in that ritual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just like one of the coolest aha things for me lately, was thinking about, wow, that's what a ritual is. That's what an intention is. That's what praying is.
Yeah, and you look at like how long prayer has happened, like, you know, and just for how many eons, like people have practiced something, right? Practiced something, whether it be candle burning or whether it's in a church or not within a church. Like, yeah.
So at Joe Dispenza, you said that was for the event that you went to was like an intermediate. So there was like a first level that you did virtually, and then you went to that event.
They refer to that as the advanced retreat. And then he has what's called, I think they just call it the progressive now. For a long time, he would teach like a weekend, and then he got to this point where he was like, I really want to work with the people who are doing the work. They're doing the meditations every day. They're doing the work on themselves. And so he would, they would just do the progressive like on. So I watched the progressive on, but now I believe he also does the progressive live. It's like a 3-day or a 4-day. And there's just a ton of information in that around quantum physics and just all of his work. No,
Yeah.
so good. All of his work is so good.
I think it's incredible the way he ties everything. Like he's a big to me, he seems like a why guy or, a truth seeker.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is how I feel like I am, which is why I can appreciate so much someone who gives the context,
Absolutely.
explains the why.
Absolutely.
And he's also collecting that to, I hate to use the word legitimize, but to make, I think, consider it making it more accessible to people by collecting that data.
Absolutely.
And then, his own story, which you shared with me
Mm-hmm.
about, I think you said he was hit by a car when he
Mm-hmm.
was in a
his 20s.
marathon
Yeah.
and healed himself.
I can't remember which book. He tells that story I can't remember which book it is, but one of his books, he tells that story. And it was funny because when I was registering for his event, because it happened in the Palm Springs area, and I was in Palm Springs the day that registration opened for the event, and I was listening to like the book on audiobook, and I had just heard the story while in the same area that it happened in as I was registering for the retreat. So there was a big synchronicity there.
Yeah, that's a lot of alignment. That's a big sign.
Yeah.
Lots of alignment.
Yeah. But he's definitely someone that walked a journey, that created a transformation, and that ventured on to get to the bottom of what the heck happened. How did I do that? And is just gone. I mean, to say full tilt is like not even really doing it justice. Yeah, highly recommend his work to anyone who's on a healing journey. Or on a manifestation journey.
Yeah. I want to talk about your offerings. I know you have just recently launched a series. Is that available? And you had several great speakers. Is that available to anyone? Is that
It still can be. Yeah, I have the
Okay.
recordings available. Yeah, that was called the Abundance Activation. It was a 5-day live event where I basically taught on the money manifestation techniques that I teach on, and provided that container for that activating abundance in your life to happen. And then I had 6 guest speakers also share their perspective, which was great. It was the first time I had done it that way, and we had 175 people join from 5 different countries. So it was really, really great. Yeah.
What is your main way in helping people with their manifesting of wealth right now? Do you typically do like more one-on-one coaching, or are you moving more into like live events like that? What are you?
So I do both. I have a 12-week live group program called Manifest Money Mastery that I have one session in now, and then I'll do another one probably in the spring of 2025. So that is my main focused on, pretty much on anything that you work with me, that's probably going to come up. Because I'm just such a stand for women to expand in their own wealth and their own success. For lots of reasons. But then I also have one-on-one programs as well. I have a one-on-one program that is focusing just on life and mindset. And then I have a one-on-one program that focuses on business. So in all of my programs, I'm including the tools of subconscious reprogramming. So we're doing things like hypnosis. We're doing things like time techniques, which is where we can travel down our timeline in the subconscious of where a limiting belief got started and actually rewire it. We're doing things like EFT tapping. So I'm always integrating the subconscious work. And then also being an intuitive, like I read the Akashic Records and I do intuitive readings. So I'll usually integrate that in some way, or you can get those as individual sessions from me.
And then you and I, for this episode, are doing a giveaway, which we're going to put some information out there about. But basically, anyone watching this right now, if you text manifesting wealth, not text, if you send a direct message on Instagram to Nicole and I, say manifesting wealth, and we will enter you into a drawing for a giveaway for a one-on-one foundational
Akashic Abundance Breakthrough Session. Yeah. So in the Akashic Abundance Breakthrough Session, we will ask your records, what is your actual core wound or block around money, and what is the pathway forward for you to actually heal and transform that? Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
amazing.
So that, and then also a special gift to help you along on your wellness journey. So once you hear this, just make sure you're following both of our pages. Send us a DM, and we'll be doing the drawing at midnight when this episode airs.
Ooh, yay.
Yeah. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you and learn more about your offerings?
Yeah, so definitely Instagram at Nicole Renee Ray. So it's Nicole, Renee with 2 E's, and then Ray. And then my website is also NicoleReneeRay.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from you today.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
you being
much.
here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So exciting.
See you next time.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. Be sure and hit like and then subscribe so that you don't miss an episode.